Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Believe in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots. And of course, we want to say hello to the great Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic, covering the Cincinnati Bengals on the daily. Paul, how you doing today?
Doing great, Solly. What's up?
Well, I tell you what's up is we're excited about this football team, and we're excited about the defense. And that's why I wanted to begin this conversation with you, just talking about something that I don't know that we've been able to talk about for a long time around here, and that's depth on the defensive line. I mean, we have multiple layers. I think in this league, many coaches I talk to, they say you can never have enough pass rushers. You can never have enough depth on the defensive line. So even with Sexy Dex and with Jonathan Allen and with Boyet Mafe, talk to me about those guys, but tell me about maybe some of the excitement with the second wave of players on this defensive line as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest excitement that you hear coming out of Bengals practices right now is not just the talent that those guys have or even the size, which is overwhelming, especially when you look at Dexter Lawrence
That's right.
standing there. But like it's just the veteran intelligence and instincts,
Yep.
the understanding of how to play the position along those guys on the front line between Lawrence and Allen and Mafe. You know, them next to Murphy is your front four. Well, behind them is all guys that at one point in time you thought were going to be your starting line right there.
That's
All
right.
young guys. Cassius Howell, Shamar Stewart when he comes back. TJ Slayton, who they signed in free agency, is in there. Like you just have a bunch of different guys, the young guys that can come up, and these veterans
Mm-hmm.
that are in front of them, leading the way, knowing how to do it. You check all the boxes,
Yeah.
and those guys in that second wave are guys that have very high hopes for their career. They big pedigrees, and they've especially Cassius Howell, the second round pick out of A&M, has really looked like it to this point.
Yeah.
It's just well constructed. If you cared about depth, if you cared about having answers for all kinds of different formations they can do, whether they're flopping from the 3-4 to the 4-3, all of that is really taken care of, and that has shown itself through 10 practices.
I got to tell you, I was at practice just last week. I was so impressed with Jonathan Allen, who for a 10-year veteran's got fresh legs. I mean, this guy, his motor at the three technique defensive tackle, and he's going to get a lot of single opportunities, right? With single blocking, with Dexter Lawrence taking up maybe double teams, sometimes triple teams, because that's what it's going to take to even try to keep him out of your backfield. But talk to me about what Jonathan Allen is looking like in this training camp. He looks as good as we've ever seen him, and this guy has had a stellar 10-year career.
One of the things when the Bengals were evaluating defensive linemen in free agency that they looked at was, you know, when you watch Jonathan Allen, his numbers weren't as impressive last year in Minnesota. There was kind of a thought that maybe he wasn't exactly used in the same ways or the ways that were best for him, like we saw during his prime in Washington. But what they did see was a guy still winning one-on-one.
That's
Like
right.
when he had one-on-one opportunities to rush the passer, he was still winning. And they saw that as the type of guy they feel like they could fit specifically. When you end up with Dexter Lawrence, it's augmented. I mean, they signed him before that ever happened, but like
That's right.
they wanted winners. They wanted one-on-one winners, and Lawrence ended up being the perfect answer to help create more one-on-ones for
That's right.
everybody. Maffe's really the same way. And yeah, Allen's looked like that. The other thing is, as he's older, you know, he's 31. BJ Hill also 31, and he'll be back here before too long. He's been out
Yeah.
during camp.
Yeah.
But those guys can help each other, keep each other fresh. I mean, that's what they need at this point in their career. And the
That's right.
idea of a fourth quarter fresh Jonathan Allen
Oof.
out there is how you close and finish games better. And that's been a primary objective for this team that has not been good at that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and we talk about depth, and we talk about just how these guys complement one another. Like Sexy Dex, you don't have to wear him out because he's very similar I should say TJ Slayton is very similar to him. But, TJ Slayton is going to be needed to spell Dexter Lawrence, but you don't feel like you're going to get a significant drop off in play. BJ Hill and Jonathan Allen at that 3 technique, very similar. I mean, they're going to be rested and ready when the fourth quarter hit, when you have to close out these games, providing we can play with the lead. But why am I hearing everyone wants TJ Slayton traded out of Cincinnati, or maybe other teams want him out of Cincinnati? I want him on this roster in 2026. I think he's that critically important.
You know what? And I thought before, on paper, the idea of moving on from TJ Slayton made sense. He makes a lot of money, and you have Dexter Lawrence now. And I think it was kind of going to revolve around if McKinley Jackson could come in and be a solid backup that you could like. We haven't really seen that. But we know what we have seen, Solly? We've seen this Slayton, Dexter Lawrence next to each other thing has started to happen. And it's interesting because they're 2 big bodies. I mean, try to run at those 2 guys. You're not going to like what happens next. And normally you wouldn't want 2 essentially nose tackles next to each other, obviously. But Dexter changes the math on that because he's so good as a pass rusher. That's not something you almost ever get out of someone of his size.
That's right.
So it makes it less of a deal that you don't get as much of a pass rush out of TJ Slayton. But if you want to try to run against these dudes, it's a wall. And we've seen that because Shamar Stewart got hurt. And so now we've started to see a little bit as they've plugged in that gap of Slayton next to Lawrence. And I'm like, I like this. The more I look at it, the more you like it. And you can see some things, especially on early downs, where you could be like, this could be a real advantage for this team if they moved into using this at times. And obviously he's also going to be a really, really solid backup there for behind Lawrence.
In a perfect world, the edge rushers, Miles Murphy should have an excellent season. He's going to get a lot of one-on-ones. Shamar Stewart's got to get healthy. I do not like the fact that he's missing critical practice time, the time to get better. These are those days where you improve your game. So it's not a good thing that he's out and was injured early. I think first day they were out on the practice field. But Cassius Howell, Miles Murphy, Cedric Johnson, any of these at Boyet Mafe, the edge rushers, with the attention that the guys who are so good on the inside are going to get, the guys on the outside who are on the edge are going to get a lot of opportunities to get their hands on the quarterback.
Yeah, and that group has looked really good. I mean, all of them, and it's, again, they haven't been out there playing against real teams, and you got to have all the early camp asterisks on it, but just like it feels like it's coming together. Howell in particular, I mean, he hadn't gone against the ones very much. Most of his early camp was spent playing against backups coming off that edge. And the first day that they let him get in there and get some hacks in against the ones, he plants Orlando Brown on the ground on one rush, and then he teleports around him on the next, and he was just disruptive. Now, he had some reps where he got stoned, and he's going to go through that, but you saw it. It was quite a flash for his first time against the ones. He's been super disruptive. I mean, the twos haven't really been much of a match for him. You can see it, and you can see them figuring out how are some other ways we can use him. I think the guy won SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and you watch his highlight tapes, and you're like, no one's even getting a hand on him because his bend and his acceleration is elite. But the thing I think that has impressed coaches here has been the physicality that he's played with, because he is a smaller guy, so you don't always think you're getting that. They've gotten that, and Zach Taylor actually, I think last week, talked about him in the same breath as the physicality and tenacity of Eric All. And if anybody knows anything about how Zach Taylor feels about Eric All's physicality, he holds him in the truly highest regard possible. To even get mentioned in that, I thought was telling in terms of how they feel about the mentality that Howell's playing with. And that's a big plus for a guy that you wondered about how his physicality would match here in the NFL.
I think that's one of the big unknown factors about this team that's so offensive-led. How are they going to become a more physical team on both sides of the ball? And I think putting quarterback under center, using the run game in a different kind of way is going to help that offensively. Using Eric Ald maybe as a sort of that H-back, fullback kind of deal with 12 personnel. It's going to be very interesting to see how they level up their physicality on offense. But defensively, I think the arrival of Dexter Lawrence does that immediately. We know he's a force multiplier. And then to have guys all coming off the edge like Cassius Howell factoring in that physicality, that just ups the level. I think Brian Cook in the secondary, we're going to talk about them in a minute. But I want to first talk about the off-ball linebackers. Demetrius Knight Jr., Barrett Carter. What are you seeing from them through the first 10 days of training camp when they're on the field? Because it's been said that the interior defensive linemen are going to make their lives easier at the second level.
And I'm sure that they will, especially once you get into real games and tackling. And you've seen that. But the difference to me is just the confidence and the step faster they appear to be, the instincts. You know, I think we felt like we would see them play confidently just because of the things they were saying and the type of guys that they were and where they felt like they were at, and a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. But you've seen them make plays. You've seen them be loud and celebrating those plays. And there was one play in a red zone drill where Barrett Carter was kind of the guy to get picked on, and Burrow had T. Higgins breaking open in the back of the end zone, and Carter sees it, reads his eyes, is able to jump into the zone, get his hands on it, and break up what would have been a touchdown. And I talked to him about it afterwards, and he's like, yeah, I mean, that's the exact type of play where I was the step faster, that inch faster that you needed to be than I ever would have been last year. I wouldn't even known, okay, this is the moment where I'm trying to read his eyes, and then where the passing lane was even going to be. Now he sees it, read his eyes, get in the passing lane, you get your hands on that ball, and you stop a touchdown from happening. And we've seen that whether it's been in the way they aggressively they've blitzed, how they've gone after some in the run game. Like you see them being that step faster into a passing lane, into a gap that you expect from year 1 to year 2. It's been notable. They have looked the part. They have not looked out of place. Solly, they also have not had to tackle a soul. So we'll see what that looks like when it's time to actually do that, because that's a big part of where the struggle was last year. But the confidence and the understanding of what they're doing, that has been apparent through 10 days.
Half the box checked on read and reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to recognize and read and recover and execute is another level up. And that's what should happen from year 1 to year 2. That's where you make your biggest jump forward. But the missed tackle rate last year was such a alarming number that you're right. We're going to have to wait for the real bullets to fly before we really find out what that's about. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. When you're playing behind a Dexter Lawrence, when you're playing behind a Jonathan Allen, the guards aren't going to be able to get to the second level. It's going to be a clean opportunity to tackle without big guys leaning on you. And they're just going to have to come through. I'm believing in both players who played for big-time schools and big-time programs in college. They're used to it. Year 1 could be very difficult reading that, particularly with the situation they were faced with in year 1 during their rookie season. Let's talk about the secondary. I'm hearing and seeing when I was there for practice, I think Brian Cook has had a really good sort of impact on this secondary. And we're getting really good play from both cornerbacks. Dax Hill, DJ Turner's competing. We're actually finding defensive backs who don't want to allow Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to catch every ball in practice. That's a good thing for this group, isn't it, Paul?
Man, DJ Turner's had a great camp, and he had a great year last year, so it's not unexpected. But, I mean, he had a practice. I mean, he's been basically following Jamar Chase around and just wants the smoke. You know, like he's in for it. He's talking. You can hear him. When he gets a breakup, you're going to hear about it. He's going to follow Jamar around to get himself better. And he was literally fighting on day 1, throwing a punch at Jamar Chase, like to set a message of I'm here. They wanted to set a tone. Everybody came to bring it, and they brought it. And it, I think, got under each other's skin. And so be it. It's kind of been the answer to that. He has been great. Yeah, I think you really like that. Dax has been banged up and missed a lot of time lately, but he should be fine. Brian Cook, to me, the biggest difference is he's just a true professional. Like he
Yes.
brings a professionalism, a communication, and an
Yeah.
expectation of accountability to all those around him. And I'm not saying anything about what was going on before him other than,
Yeah.
it wasn't good enough.
Yes.
Brian Cook brings that level, and everybody around him, I think, senses that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all business. And
Yeah.
and he hadn't made a huge play in camp, but he was noticed. And then all of a sudden he picks off Joe Burrow for a pick six to close a
The
practice last
practice,
week,
yeah.
and everybody's celebrating. You can feel the confidence, and it was no big deal to him. It was another day.
Yeah.
He was happy to do it, but you can. It's just he's a professional in every way, and everybody seems to feed off that and stay in the right spots and be relying on his consistency. And so I just think that impact has really helped everybody around him play more confidently.
Yeah, he's the force multiplier on the back end of this defense and much needed. I can't tell you how much they talk about him in Kansas City and how much Steve Spagnuolo relied upon him to get everyone lined up. He was always playing with young defensive backs and young corners around him, but yet he was a guy that could certainly get people lined up and played in a lot of big games and won multiple Super Bowls. I want to kind of get into your rookie report because I was able to go through it. I loved your breakdown of each and every guy, but I want to start because I know you talked earlier about Cassius Howell and some of the things he's done. He's got all the moves, he's got all the spin, but his ability to get on the practice field, stay healthy, and get the work in has been so very important with them getting ready to play the Detroit Lions in this preseason game. How much work are we going to see from Cassius Howell in that first preseason game? And what do you expect?
Well, it's a good question. He sat out Tuesday with a little bit of a ding. He said he's going to play, but I don't really ever believe players when they say they're gonna or gonna not gonna play. Not really his decision. So we'll see how much, if they hold him back at all or feel like he's fine. So otherwise he would have played a ton
Yeah.
for sure. But still, whenever he gets in there in these games, I think you're gonna see. They're going to want to use him in different ways. They want to test him as a dropper, which we've seen him do some, which he, 2 to 3, 4 times a game, maybe you would use him that way and to get a simulated pressure or whatever. You'll see him, scream off the edge or whatever. That's what he does best.
Yeah.
But I think they want to get him just some comfort in the defense and then get him out there doing what he does. But yeah, I think as soon as he gets an opportunity, it's going to look good because he's kind of he's built to go win out there.
This guy is got the speed, but he also has the toughness to go in that package. You gave him a B in his rookie report card, which isn't final at this point because they haven't played in the game, but just entering preseason action, he's carrying the B grade. Takario Davis, the 3rd round pick cornerback, you gave him a C+. What have you seen from him? How much action do we expect him to get against the Lions?
He'll play a lot. Takario has been not noticed. And as you know, in the secondary, that's good, right? You do not want to be noticed, right?
That's right.
We haven't seen him getting burnt. We haven't seen him having MAs that we see, and coaches aren't bemoaning tons of those. He's got his hands on the ball a couple of times, but not a lot. So it's been kind of solid. And he hasn't ruined it, but he hasn't jumped in front of DJ Ivey, who's the 3rd corner right now. And with Dax out, he's been the one up with the first team. It's not like he's been sensational, but I think it's a solid start. Again, this is a first impression grade. You don't want to fail your first impression, but if you're solid at the beginning of your first camp, that's good. Your chance to take off starts on Thursday. We'll see him a ton. I'm really fascinated to see if he can get out there and make plays, or if it continues to be one of those things where we don't really talk about it much. I mean, you see his length. You see why he had the longest wingspan of any corner drafted. He gets his hands on balls that a lot of guys wouldn't. And so that shows up, but you're just going to look for a little bit more playmaking, a little bit more consistency, and that's going to come with comfort out there.
Yeah, we're going to need to see a lot of him. I think the more reps you can get at that position, the better going into the regular season. 4th round pick, center Connor Liu. You gave him a B grade. I know in your report you said he's not expected to play on Thursday against Detroit. Tell us, what have you seen from him by at least so far, and why will he not be playing in the preseason?
Well, he's coming off a torn ACL, which is part of the reason why they even got him in the fourth round, that he sustained at the end of his time at Auburn. And so it's been a ways back. They were easing him in at the beginning of camp. I was talking the other day. He's like, started out with, how about just three reps out there in team, see how that feels, and then go forward to the next day. Well, to go from there at the beginning of camp to on Tuesday, he's out there doing a full drive with the first team around him.
Wow.
That continuity on the offensive line that we've been talking so much about,
Yeah.
there was the young rookie, coming off the ACL out there in the middle of it. He said, I just didn't want anybody to even notice I was out there. He said afterwards, I said, did anybody say anything to you? Anybody else say anything? He's like, Amarius. He said, oh, yeah, I didn't even know you were out there. It worked. It worked. Marius Mims didn't even know that Connor Lew was out there instead of Ted Karras, who was getting him that day. So to go from where he was at the beginning to then just being out there and not being noticed necessarily with the first team, although he did have a bad snap as a part of that, is a big step for when you consider what you were expecting. We didn't even know how much he was going to get on the field. So by practice 10 to be at that point, that's a B. I mean, I think that's solid progress and somebody that you can count on to be your backup center this year behind Ted.
Offensive line, defensive back, you just want to fly below the radar, baby. They should never know you're even in the room. And that means you're doing well. You and I both know, because oftentimes when you're called out, it's because something went wrong. Look, all the buzz in this training camp among any of the rookies is really, a lot of the attention has gone towards fourth-round pick wide receiver Colby Young. And when I was there, I got a full glimpse of it. First of all, his presence, that 6'4", 216, whatever, his catch radius is so phenomenal. But he also, for a bigger guy, he has the kind of speed to separate at the top of his route. He's so polished as a wide receiver that you're looking at a tremendous upside for him. But I guess, like myself, you just want to see it day by day, incremental, maybe answering the moment. What have you seen from him so far? I see you gave him a B. That's pretty good for a rookie.
Yeah, his flashes are going to go viral. They're going to get Bengals fans all excited when they go through X, right? They're going to love watching him high point and moss people, which he has done. He's shown up consistently doing that. That's great. Like that is living up to your reputation a little bit. I think what I want to see, what I don't know that we've seen, is the other parts of his game. I want to see more of that separation. I want to see more of that route running, because if he can add that to what he obviously can do and just picking the ball off guys' heads and that type of stuff that we've seen, like if he can add that to those highlights, you become more of a complete guy. It reminds me of, did they draft, someone's like, oh, we draft another T. Higgins. No. Because one thing that is, and anybody there will tell you, that is underrated massively about T's game is how good he is as a route runner, how great he is at getting separation and having polish in all those routes. We need to see that part develop from Colby. And also, remember, this is the Bengals. If he ever's on the field, you're talking about targets are not going to be looking for him because Jamar and T and those other guys, he's got to prove he's willing to go in there and dig out the safety. He's willing to crack if there's a run coming off his side. He's got to do those things. So that's where I think you want to see a little more from Colby. But thus far, he can make the big plays, and he's gaining a lot of confidence because of that.
Let's be clear. The elephant in the room, can he supplant Andre Yoshivas as that third receiver? But Yoshivas has really earned the trust of Joe Burrow. That's where the rubber meets the road. If you're going to unseat one of these receivers, you've got to first win the trust of the quarterback. And Yosh is he's way ahead of Colby Young in that category.
And understanding this offense. They run a complicated offense that they have all this continuity with. They're doing a lot of different things. If you go out there and the quarterback doesn't know if you're going to know to be in the right spot and know all the motions and be in the right place, Yoshi will. Okay,
Yes,
he
he will.
knows that.
Yep.
And Yoshi has had a solid camp as well. He's still got drops that are hanging over him, but he is as fast as he's been and as confident he's ever been. You got this offense needs to know that that guy is going to know exactly what they're doing and what's happening on every play.
Yep.
And you just can't count on that for a rookie. And that's no knock on Colby Young. That's just you can't count on that from a rookie on day one from a guy who's in year 4 out of Princeton, right?
One last player before we let you go. Landon Robinson, you gave him a C. You talked about the size disadvantage. He's 6 feet, 295. When standing next to Dexter Lawrence, he looks like he might be on the Pee Wee team, right?
Which is not fair. A lot of good NFL players would look like they're on the Pee Wee team.
That's exactly right. That's how big Dexter Lawrence is. So Landon Robinson, I'm sure he's going to get a chance to play against Detroit. How is he faring in camp so far?
You know, he's doing okay. I just there's a reason guys his size don't typically succeed in the league. Yeah. And you see, I think but he's about all the right stuff. I was talking to him the other day and he said, you know, I'm trying to lean on these guys to help me because I'm learning how different the techniques of offensive linemen are on this level because they can just do bigger things, right? And for him, that he's got to be a technician. He's not going to overpower people. Right. And so he's just trying to work his way mentally through what some of those new techniques are and get better at that stuff. And you've seen him. I mean, he's had moments like he's certainly, you understand why he had success at Navy and, you know, off the field, he's an A+++ in terms of you're going to get the most out of him. The question is, will technique and being a good technician be enough to overcome some of the size disadvantage that he has? And they'll have to find that out when they get into the games a little bit more.
To give you an idea of what he's working with, his size very similar to that of the great Aaron Donald.
Don't do that, Solly. Don't do that, Solly.
I'm just saying. It goes to show you that, and Dick LeBeau would always say, B-I-G don't spell man.
That's right.
What I'm saying?
That's right. There's plenty of hope to make it happen. It's
that's right.
It's easier said than done.
I played with a guy in fact, he may be a little bit smaller, and that was John Randall as an interior defensive lineman. And we called Chris Dolman's nickname for John Randall was Little Muscle. Because he was he wasn't little. He was he was undersized for an interior defensive lineman, but he was all muscle. Trust me when I tell you. He's Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic. He's great, does a wonderful job covering the Cincinnati Bengals on a daily basis. Paul, love reading your work. We always enjoy the stuff you put out. Keep up the great work, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you for joining us here on the Believe in Bengal podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Thank you once again. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Sally.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.